Hi everyone, welcome back to Writer's Workshop. I'm Roja. This is week 2 of Writer's Workshop Wednesdays, and today we're going to talk about how to start writing. I started writing personally when I was in elementary school. Let me just fix this a little bit here because it's slanted. There we go. When I was in elementary school, maybe at 13 years old or 12, I started to journal and scrapbook, and I started to squiggle little things here and there. And eventually, going into grade 9 to high school, I actually started to keep a journal and keep many journals, most of which, when I read back, I was just like, wow, what, what was wrong with me? And then I realized I was a child. However, writing consistently all the time and every single day, documenting events that were absolutely insignificant, right down to some important events, I guess, like everything every day, and then, the important days, um, led to me being able to write better than I ever thought possible by the time I was 15, which is when I wrote my first novel. Of course, the the outcome of that novel is about 10 million times better than it was when I wrote it for the first time when I was 15. However, it was still received incredibly well by some of my teachers and a few of my friends as well, even though I was only 15. So, the, tic- the trick to writing every day, um, you don't always have to keep a journal, but you should write at least a paragraph each day. I personally keep a log, and I'm going to add a link to the description with a list of topics you guys can write about just to practice. So, writing prompts, basically. I keep a list of things that I like to write about that are very general, just to keep practicing my skill, because everything, as in everything else, like if you're a runner, you're going to need to practice running and train for running in order to be able to participate in races and win these races. Just like so, you have to do the same thing for writing. You have to write every day. You have to practice as often as possible throughout the week in order for you to maintain and build the skill. Um, and I already mentioned in the previous video that the only way you can get better at writing is first by reading, but also you have to keep a notebook on your side. If you're creative of any sort, you know very well that ideas come to you at the most random times in the random places, and we don't always have notebooks with us wherever we go. And sometimes I personally would make a little note in my phone, and then I'll come across it again like 3, 4 months later, sometimes a few weeks later. Sometimes I'll remember that I put it in there and then I'll go back to it. When I update my little notebook, I tend to go back to it. I always keep a notebook in my bag as well wherever I go, just in case I think of something and I might not remember it 2 hours from then, or when I get home, in order for me to write about it. So, a notebook and a pen always goes a long way. Even if you have a journal or an agenda that you keep every day, then you might want to just, scribble a note in there somewhere, about the idea that you had. You might have thought of a character sketch. You might have thought of an idea for a novel. You might have thought of something for a setting. If you were writing a fantasy novel, you might have thought of a type of creature that just, you pictured, which doesn't really exist in reality, but only you can explain it. But you pictured it, but then before you forget about it, you want to write it down. This notebook basically is just to track your ideas and your brainstorming when you're not really intentionally brainstorming, but things come to your mind. Keep it next to your bed when you go to sleep, so that whenever you um, have a little thought before bed. I know a lot of people, like creatives, have the tendency to um, experience insomnia sometimes, or lie awake just imagining things, because as writers, or artists and singers, dance choreographers, entrepreneurs of short, we always have these ideas just popping up in our heads, and then we think about how to execute it and what to do next and yada yada yada. So the best way to be able to fall asleep without all of these going through your head all the time is to write down the thoughts that are going through your head and document it, so that you know that you can rest assured that you're going to wake up and remember, or have some documentation of what you just thought about that you can go back to. Now, another tip is, of course, like I said, I'm going to share that writing prompts document with you, so you guys can download that and print it out, and then, write these like little paragraphs and ideas into your own notebooks or journals or something. But also, um, to just force yourself to write anything at least once a day. I would say once a day. If not once a day, then maybe at the least once a week. A paragraph. A paragraph a week will go a long way in helping you practice your writing skills. Of course, writing fiction, again, is very different from writing nonfiction. So if you're going to write something that is like a self-help book, or if you're going to write something, you know, based on science or history, or an essay, or anything of those sorts, then you would probably have to research as well. For fiction, your research is mostly going to consist of the books that you write, that you've already read. And if you have further research to do, then you can. But I'm assuming, the way that I do it, I read only what I know that I'm going to, find inspiration from, or is going to help my writing technique. Um, and and also genres that I enjoy reading, because what I enjoy reading is definitely what I also like to write about. So I pick up on the research aspect usually when I read anyway. I do read nonfiction as well, so a lot of the times the nonfiction articles and news articles, current events, and nonfiction books that I read do inspire some areas of some writings that I do, but they usually only come with like a description of, a historical event or something like that. Or if I'm talking about, I don't know, students building something or creating some sort of compound of chemicals or whatnot, whatever I read would probably have details about elements, because that's not my expertise. I'm not a scientist, so I would have to read up on it in order to have some kind of, background that matches realism, that helps the realism of the book, um, in order for it to not sound like just fluff and made up nonsense, right? There, realistic aspects always helps with the nonfiction work as well, a lot more than you can imagine. You can create a fake element and fake compounds, um, and fake chemicals, and write that into your science fiction or science novels. So I don't write science fiction, I'm just using this as an example. But or you could actually do the research to find out what causes what, and then incorporate that kind of stuff into your science fiction novel, or even your, I guess, teen drama, where teenagers are in a classroom doing an experiment. um, Another thing is, like I mentioned, you should always keep a notepad with you wherever you go, so that you can write down all of the ideas. Um, One way to do that, if you're not constantly getting ideas, it's, um, I guess that's kind of rare for creatives. Like most of the times, your mind is just running and overflowing with ideas. But if that's not really happening for you, if you're, um, experiencing some sort of writer's block, one thing that you can do, one small suggestion, is just look around the room that you're in, pick an object, and write from that object's perspective at that particular time and moment. I remember sitting in my lunch room during work, and I was just, this time, instead of reading, I was actually sort of practicing my writing. I was just scribbling stuff, and I saw a toaster, and this toaster had two sections to it, and one of the handles was broken. And because this is a trick that I picked up some years ago, I thought to myself, okay, I'm gonna write from this toaster's perspective. And I started to write, where is my left arm? Who took my left arm? And it was kind of a funny thing when I read back on it. It's kind of a funny piece, but it was still something that was helping me to practice my writing, and it almost sounded like a monologue in a script, um, and a very crazy angry toaster that was when I read it back. But that's a trick to do if you're not inside a room, and if it's not objects, like, man-made objects. There's always nature. Nature is always an incredibly fun thing to write about. Pretending to be a tree, or writing from the perspective of a tree or a flower or the grass. A bunch of little kids are running around on a soccer field, and the grass is getting stomped on all afternoon. How does that grass feel? So there's so much that you can um, get inspired by, but the trick is to just pick. Don't overthink it. I know that I can't say anybody taught me to do this particular thing. I know that I just one day decided I'm just going to write about anything because I liked writing so much. I was like, I'm going to write just anything. And I would intentionally just pick whatever I saw first and write from that perspective. So I know when I tell people this same advice, they tend to get all anxious and confused about, oh, but what should I pick? What can I write? What which part of nature is the best thing to choose in order for me to write the best work in? Don't overthink it. Don't even worry about what the best work is going to come out of. Just pick. Like, what do you see first? You see a lamppost as soon as you walk outside? Write from that perspective. Just pick and write. And if you can't really, if you're having a hard time thinking of stuff, if you're experiencing writer's block, I rarely get writer's block. So I have some um, uh, techniques and ideas on how to, not techniques, what is the word? I have some advice on how to get out of writer's block, but I've very seldom experienced it, so it will be another topic for another video. But a lot of times writer's block really is just overthinking and getting anxious over just simple practice. So when you get into the habit of practicing writing by just writing about just about anything, things you care about, things you don't care about, things that mean something, things that don't mean anything, when you come down to your actual novel, you've already had so much practice writing. Or even if it's not a novel, if it's your short story or your prose or short fiction, your nonfiction, your essays, you've had so much practice writing all kinds of material that the words will pretty much start flowing out of you. The best way to do this is to begin without being afraid. Begin without overthinking it. Begin without wondering if it's going to be a good piece or not. The the I will guarantee you the first 50 to 500 pieces that you write are going to be for only your eyes and your eyes alone. And it's going to be after that. Like, I've probably written 1,000 something pieces, maybe even more, because I used to write like every day from the time I was 14 or so. And I'm now in my 30s. It was probably 1,000 something pieces before I actually started to share my work. I'm not saying that you have to write 1,000 something pieces before you share your work. I'm just saying that you don't have to worry about all the pieces that you write being perfect and good. Just think of it as you don't, you know, if you're a soccer player, you don't go to your first soccer practice or your first 10 soccer practices and worry that people are watching and you have to give the best performance. What you're actually focused on is what you're learning and actually getting the touches on the ball and passing the ball. You're focused on just getting through that practice and hopefully learning something new. And just the idea that you're going to get to kick the ball a few times is going to help you get better at soccer, whether you notice it right away or not. So 5,000 touches later, now that pass is ingrained in your muscles. It is now a muscle memory. It's the same way with writing. When you do it over and over again, it's not because you want to share it with everybody else. It's because you're practicing your craft and you're honing your skills so that when you are ready to share it, you don't have to think twice about what you're writing. You know what you're going to write, and it's going to come to you a lot easier. So again, practice makes perfect. So make sure that you take some time off. Just like you take some time to read every day, make sure you take some time to write every day. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you really liked it, please like, subscribe, and share it with anybody you think is going to enjoy and benefit from this video. I will see you next week on Wednesday with another episode of Writers Workshop Wednesdays. Ta-da!